Okay, this morning for story time, I had a buddy of mine, Billy, tag me in a post on the old FB, and he had a memory that came up from one of his trips to Asia, and it kind of reminded me of a trip that I went with Billy, where we had a little small 3-week stint in South Korea. We went over, and I know everybody has, when you get a new cell phone or a new TV, you peel off that little piece of clear protective plastic, that protects it in the case so that it looks perfect when you pull it out. So there's no dirt, no nothing on it. You peel it off and you instantly throw it away. It has no other purpose than to just keep it clean inside the box it's already in. But we go to South Korea to start up a line for a company who shall remain nameless, but their slogan's "Life's Good," so you can figure out who it is. But we go to, I believe it was Daesan, South Korea. I think that was it. It was Ulsan or Daesan, can't remember. But we go over, and basically, we're starting up the line that makes that plastic that you tear off and throw away. Now, to give you an idea of how big this line was, it made 18,000 pounds per hour of this plastic. Now, to put that in a perspective that a lot of people can understand, 18,000 pounds an hour is 5 pounds per second. So every second, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there was 25 pounds right there. And just something you can equate that to, think about a milk jug. A little over 5 pounds, but something you can wrap your mind around. A milk jug. Every second, every single second, there's a milk jug popping out of this machine, a glob of plastic this big. It's molten, it's 300-400 degrees, and, every second. So you got to really be ready. So the startup was a little bit stressful. Me and Billy were trying to get it going. We show up, and needless to say, we were a little bit early because the building wasn't finished. We were still working outside, like this. Having walls and a door you can open is a luxury compared to what we had. It was wintertime in South Korea, and this is what I wore to work every day. I had on 2 pairs of the thermal socks, the big ones that almost knee-high, big gray, thick thermal socks. 2 pair every day, pair of steel-toe work boots, long john thermal underwear, a pair of fire-retardant jeans, so they were the thicker ones, a long sleeve shirt. I would wear a sweatshirt over top of that, and then the thickest winter coat I could find, and a ski mask, and 2 pair of gloves. That's what I wore to work every single day. It was that cold. And when we would get to go inside the control room, when we were not out at the equipment, I would leave all that on. All the little Koreans, when they would come in the control room, they would instantly start stripping off all their stuff and sit down, kick their feet back, because you have to take your shoes off. Whenever you come into a room over there, you have to take your shoes off. They'd all kick their feet back, put their little slippers on, and walk around the control room. I would leave everything on. And Billy looked at me one day and he was like, "Why are you leaving all that on?" I said, "Because for at least just a few minutes, I wanted to know what it felt like to be warm." So we're there, and it was cold enough that the water in our tank was froze solid. I mean, just froze solid. Luckily, we had shipped it with all the valves shut, so nothing, burst. But they finally get walls up. Finally erect walls. They can enclose doors. And I can turn some heat on. And for basically 3 days, I just turned heats on and stood around and warmed my hands and watched the other workers work. You know, they weren't ready for us yet, so I just stood around warming myself up. Billy came by one day and he's like, "Man, are you ready to run?" I was like, "No, I'm nowhere near ready to run, but I'm staying warm while we're here." So the important footnote through all of this was our translator, which was our rep. He's supposed to take care of us while you're in country. He, very first day, we get off the airplane, you know, it's 28-hour, 32-hour ride to get there. We get off the plane, they put us in a car, drive us 4 more hours to get to our hotel, and little guys getting our suitcases out of the car, gets ours out. And I look and I'm like, "Okay, what? Where's your suitcases?" He goes, "Oh, I'm going home. I'm going to spend the night at home." And in my head, I went, that's a 4-hour ride we just took to get here. You're not going to get up, you know, at 2 a.m. to be back here at 6. I said, "Are you not coming?" He says, "Oh, no. Plant personnel will come get you." I'm like, "Okay, all right. We can do this. We can do this." Basically, we didn't have English interpreter for the next 19 days. K1 didn't show back up. He didn't come back. He stayed home, I guess, played golf, did whatever, you know. So basically, I worked with an electrician in South Korea and worked with an app. I would type in what I wanted to say, press the button, hand him the phone. He would look at it, because I'm sure it was broken Korean, because when he would type in Korean, it'd translate and hand it back to me. It was broken English. You know, in the industrial world, words don't always translate exact. So we go on like this for 19 days, hand it back and forth. You know, stuff that should take 5 minutes to do took, you know, weeks. So we finally get the line running. Like I say, in your head, just imagine a milk jug size of 400-degree material every second. So you've got to be ready. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong in a big hurry and makes one huge mess that, you know, you've either got to clean up while it's hot, which is really hazardous, or wait till it cools and chip it off of everything. So neither one's really appealing. But basically, we go to start the line. Now, it had a 1,300 horsepower electric motor. So to give you an idea, it had an electric motor about this big that was running on 6,600 volts. Put that in perspective, the outlets in your house are 120 volts. Things like your electric stove, your dryer, most of the new Teslas and electric cars you have nowadays plug in at 220 volts in your house. This motor was 6,600 volts and 1,300 horsepower. So it had an electric drive on it to start it, because it wasn't just a simple light switch, click, to turn it on and run. Didn't work that way. When it's really big, got to have a drive to get it started, get it wound up, get it going. Well, the first time they turned it on, that 6,600 volt drive went poof and tried to vaporize itself. Instantly, $250,000 piece of equipment went poof and gone. And I was for sure somebody was getting fired. Wasn't our drive, wasn't our $250,000, but I was sure somebody was going to lose their job. Now, to my amazement, if you buy a $250,000 drive, Rockwell put parts on an airplane. They bought seats on a United flight, had parts overnighted from Milwaukee, and had them in South Korea the next day and had that machine back running. So I was impressed on that. But finally goes, we can make it 19 days. We get the line running. It's humming along. It's making, remember, milk jug every second. And it's making this material that you're going to throw away, which was boggling my mind. Because think about when you peel it off the cell phone, it's probably 1/4 of an ounce what that makes. And this thing makes 5 pounds every second, every minute, all day long, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, this thing's cranking it out. And I'm thinking, how many TVs and cell phones do they got to sell that they need to make this much stuff that they're just going to tear off, throw away? So anyway, we finally get it up and running. Now, it's been a long 3 weeks. They would pick us up at the hotel at 6 a.m. every morning. A little car would show up, and every car over there is black. A little black car would show up and drive us to the plant. And we would stay there until 1 or 2 in the morning, whatever time they felt like going home, because they slept at the plant. During the week, they would sleep in company housing, and they're there around the clock. On the weekends, you got to go see family, but during the week, round the clock, you're there. So they would bring us in food, which, if anybody knows me, I'm not a huge Asian food fan. I'm not a big fan of the cheap imitation we have here in the U.S. or the real stuff there. Not a fan of either one. So one night they asked us if we want pizza. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, yes, please bring us pizza. Yes, I'm all in. Do you need me to drive the car? So they bring in stacks of pizza, and it's about 11:30 at night. They've worked us, and we had no dinner, no nothing. About 11:30 at night, they were all hungry, and they decided they'd bring us pizza. Guy comes in, and it's a stack. It looks like a Super Bowl party's about to happen. There is a stack of boxes of pizza about that big, enough to feed the whole team. And I'm like, okay, cool. There is bound to be something in there that I can eat. We're good. So the first pizza I come to, I open the lid. It has corn, waffle fries, calamari, barbecue sauce, and shrimp, all on the same pizza. And I'm like, all right, let's slide that one over to the side. Boink. Open up the next one. Same thing. I'm like, all right, a lot of pizza. They ordered 2. Dink. Open up the next one. Surprise, surprise. It's the same thing again. I keep shuffling through the boxes. Yes, that's what they ordered on like 9 pizzas. And they're all sitting around just eating it as fast as they can. Now, granted, that was not the pizza I had in my head. That was not pizza at Papa John's, Domino's, Little Caesars. That was not the pizza I had in my head. But at 11:30 at night, starving all day, working, yeah, I ate it. I ate it. Calamari, waffle fries, corn, barbecue sauce, the whole 9 yards. Because I didn't get this big by starving. So, you know, pretty much every day went like that. Every day for lunch, you went to the company cafeteria. They had 2,000 employees there. And we had massive assembly line. You just stood in the cafeteria, ate your food, went back to work. Every day it was the same thing. Rice, kimchi, and soup. And for those of you that don't know what kimchi is, it's cabbage that they grow. They put it in pots, let it rot. They bury it in the ground, let it rot, bring it out, put spices on it, and then serve it to you to eat it. That's what kimchi is. And this was a staple of life there. They all ate it, every single one of them. So about day 18, we're standing in our line of, 2,000 people getting their food. Billy looks at me and goes, "Hey, guess what we're having for lunch today?" And I said, "What, Billy?" I was all excited. I thought he knew something. I didn't. He goes, "We're having rice, kimchi, and soup." I said, "Damn it, Billy." So yeah, it was rice, kimchi, and soup. But we finally get the line running and they want to celebrate, which was a common occurrence. When you succeeded on your mission, before they would put you on the airplane to go back home, you would have a celebration dinner. They would take you out somewhere and you have a celebration dinner with the management, the workers that you'd worked with. There was a little bit of camaraderie going on. It was kind of like a congratulations, thank you for your help, enjoy your travel home. So we go to a Korean barbecue, which probably, other than the Mexican food we had one night in Korea, oddly enough, it was made by Chinese in Korea, and the Mexican food was probably the best we had. But the Korean barbecue was second on the list. And I was like, okay, I can make it on Korean barbecue, because basically they let you cook your own food. So if it's cooked wrong, it's your fault. Now, granted, you are probably eating dog, cat, horse, rabbit, goat, whatever. It's not a steak like you think it is. But anyway, go to Korean barbecue. We're good. We can eat it. Me and Billy, of course, you got to take your shoes off. You go in the little restaurant and you sit down and you sit Indian style on the floor. And you're at the little table, it's way down in the floor, and they got a butane heater in the front. You cook your meat. When it looks about good, you take your chopsticks, put it on your plate, however much you want. Put whatever sauces, spices, whatever you want on it, and basically you eat it, and they're talking to everybody. Well, we all pretty much get full, we eat, and then we're sitting around, and one of the guys goes, "Okay, now we will have traditional dessert." And I'm like, all right, okay, well, I haven't seen anything in Korean barbecue that I thought was crazy yet. It's a whole bunch of meat. They bring out a bowl and set the bowl on the table. And I'm like, all right, okay, it's some kind of dipping sauce. And then I look closer in the bowl. They're all talking, and they're taking their chopsticks and they're grabbing, stuff in the bowl, and they're eating, and they're still talking to you. And I'm kind of looking at the bowl. And it's customary that, it's very, very rude in their culture that if they offer you something and you don't take it, they get highly offended. They really get up in their feels if you don't take it. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, they're going to want me to eat one. So I take a real good look. It's caterpillars. They have a bowl full of caterpillars swimming in some kind of sauce. And I'm not real sure what the sauce was. Not that it really mattered. It could have been A1. It would still been caterpillars. So I get my little chopstick because they're starting to look. They've all had like 3 or 4 of these things, and neither me nor Billy have dove in yet. And I'm like, all right, well, I'll do it. I'll break the ice. I'll be that guy. I look at Billy and get my chopsticks, get out one, put him on my little plate, look at him for a minute, chunk, put him in my mouth, chew it up, do my best to swallow it. And Billy looks over at me and goes, "How was that?" And I basically nonchalantly looked at him and said, "Tastes just like you think a bug would." And Billy kind of chuckles, and he knows it's his turn, that he's got to do his obligation is he's got to eat one too to save their feels, to keep them from getting all bent up in their feels. So he goes, "Choop." It's his, eats it, and basically doesn't say anything, doesn't make any face, doesn't say anything. Just reaches out, gets a second one now. A second caterpillar, mind you. You're only obligated to eat one, and you could lie and say, "Oh, yes, this was good, but I'm full." "Oh, yes, it was so good. Yes, I'm full." He gets a second one and eats it. And I'm giving him the look. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, what, you know, because he's obligating me for a second one. And I'm like, what? I'm mumbling under my breath because they're still all at the table talking. And I'm like, "Billy, what are you doing?" I said, "Why on earth did you eat a second one?" And he looks at me straight face, didn't crack a smile, didn't laugh, didn't giggle, nothing. Just looks at me and goes, "I just want to make sure I didn't get a bad one." "Yeah, yeah, Billy, sure, yeah." So yes, I did have to eat a second one just because Billy wanted to see me eat a second one. He was all in for that. But basically, yeah, that was mine and Billy's. I think that was the last time me and him went to Korea together. We went on many more trips together, but that was the last time me and Billy went to Korea together. But yeah, as far as I know, that machine is still pumping out 18,000 pounds an hour milk jug every second of something you're going to throw away. And I'm betting they're still there eating them caterpillars. So just remember, if you're ever in South Korea and your friends eat a second caterpillar, don't do it. Don't do it. So that's today's story time from South Korea. And as always, thank you, Lord. Thank you for today.